Maybe you've heard this before. A musician is someone who will put $5,000 worth of gear in a $500 van, travel 100 miles, and play a $50 gig. Well, here's their story. You're probably wondering who you're watching right now. Who are these guys? Well, that's me in the backwards hat holding the Gibson SG pretending to be a guitar player. My name's Pete. The drummer back there, that's my dad. His name is also Pete. The bass player, that's Matt. To anyone else, this was just a normal day in July. But for me, I had just made the big leagues. This was my first band practice in my dad's cover band, American Originals. Let's start from the beginning, shall we? Growing up, I was always around music and I always wanted to be in a band, just like my dad. You see, my dad's a boomer, and like most kids his age, he was heavily inspired by the Beatles playing on the Ed Sullivan Show. His first band was in 8th grade called the Absolute Zeros, and from there, that became a lifelong love for my dad with music and with playing live. My dad was in bands all throughout high school and college. In the 70s, he was in a band called Prism, playing cover tunes at seemingly every bar, club, and dance hall throughout the Midwest region. Fast forward to 2007, and my dad formed American Originals with John, pictured on the left on guitar, and Matt, pictured on the right, on bass. American Originals wasn't your standard cover band. They did the songs that everyone knew, like Brown Eyed Girl and Friends in Low Places, but ultimately they really appreciated the musicianship of each other. They really pushed each other to become better players. They played stuff like Chicago and Steely Dan that normally require more than 3 people. They really explored the songs and had fun doing it. It was a blast to watch. Like most good things in life, this version of American Originals came to an end. John retired and moved away, which left my dad and Matt searching for a new guitar player. They cycled through a few until one day, they called me up to the big leagues. I was joining AO. Watching my dad play in a cover band was just about the coolest thing I had ever seen when I was a little kid. At my request, my dad started giving me drum lessons when I was in 2nd grade. It was my first love. I practiced emphatically. I grew up watching my dad, Matt, and John practice in the basement on weekends when they didn't have gigs. My dad would give me $3 of practice to get them beers, cables, tape, whatever they needed, and I was just happy to be around. As I got older, I would tag along with my dad to gigs where it was acceptable for a small lad to be there, and they would let me sit in on certain songs. This was my first taste of playing live in a band, and I loved it. I knew one day it'd be something I definitely wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be in a band, and as a drummer, I would constantly ask guitar players to come over and jam with me while I was in middle school and early on in high school. None of them meant business. They always flaked out. So I told myself, I'm going to learn how to play guitar. I took guitar lessons for about 1.5 years. I was obsessed. I loved it. I was a very diligent student and would spend hours perfecting Twinkle Twinkle Little Star because I told myself it would all pay off one day. And also, that's what it would take to be as good as John from American Originals. By the time I went off to college, I had turned myself into a pretty good player and had an idea of what I was doing on the 6 strings. About this time, American Originals started to gig again with a different guitar player. Tragedy struck when my dad broke his arm in a freak accident while going for a run, so he couldn't drum. Luckily, they knew a guy. I played about 4 shows as the interim drummer for American Originals. Soon after that, the guitar player quit, and American Originals was without a guitar player once again. Only this time, they knew a guy. Flash forward to this day again in 2017. My first practice as a guitar player for American Originals, the band I grew up watching in my basement as a small dude. Here we were. I was the guitar player. What a world. I was finally in an actual cover band. After being a 3-piece band again for several years, we added a keyboard player, Rick, pictured here after his first gig with us on the far left. Rick plays trumpet, harmonica, and the keys. He's been a great addition, and it's been a lot of fun playing as a 4-piece band. Join us for the ride as we take you behind the scenes on what it's like to be in a cover band. If you're a musician, we'll have tips and tricks on how to survive life as a gigging musician when you're playing on the weekends. If you're a person that's interested in music or likes interesting content, you'll hopefully look at musicians a bit differently with a bit different perspective after watching the series Cover Band Survivalist.